Good afternoon. It's the House Appropriations Committee on Monday, March 24th, 2025, and we're taking a break from our reading because we have Ledge Counsel here, Bryn Hare, to talk to us about the previously mentioned Joint Fiscal Committee board language that we're putting in so that we can keep track of goings on in Washington and be able to respond as nimbly as we can. So we saw a draft of that on Friday, and then work was done with Rep. Harrison and Rep. Kornheiser and JFO and Bryn. I think we have something that people are ready to go on. So Bryn, take it away.
Sure thing. So for the record, Bryn Hare, Director and Chief Counsel of Legislative Council. You should have sort of a standalone document, which reflects the new language in those couple of sections that we talked about last Friday, that amend the statutes governing sort of the process of what happens when there's budget changes in the interim when you are not in session.
So I wonder if you want to share the screen, if that's possible. We have it on the committee page. We didn't get paper handouts because it's going to be in the big bill, but it's on our committee page.
I'm happy to.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we see this? Everybody
A little bigger, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the section 32 VSA 704. This is the section of law that we were looking at last Friday that talks about the process for what happens when sources of funding are reduced during the off session. What is the process? And if you remember, there's a process that already exists in statute, which is down here in section B1, that provides if there's a reduction of 1% or more from the estimates determined and assumed for that year's appropriations. The Secretary of Administration develops a plan that goes to the Joint Fiscal Committee. So that you'll see a couple of changes here in yellow. These changes are really sort of designed to reflect what currently happens in this process, which is that the Secretary of Administration develops a plan that goes to the Joint Fiscal Committee, and the Joint Fiscal Committee considers it. And there's sort of a process that's set out in subsection E of the statute, which is existing law, that sets out some timelines and what the process for approval or disapproval looks like. So there's just a little language here added that sort of reflects what is in current practice and also refers to that subsection E, which sets out the timelines and the process. Okay, I'm going to move on to subdivision 3, which is on the next page. And so this is the trigger language that we talked about yesterday. You'll remember, or Friday.
Right, feels like it.
Yes. So the original proposal that was before you was in the event that there was a reduction in federal funds that resulted in a 1% or more total reduction to an appropriation, that triggered a series of events. So this has changed now. So that what we're looking at is in the instance that a reduction of federal funds results in a 1% or more reduction in the total federal funds anticipated for that fiscal year. That is the trigger now. And the same series of things happens with a few little tweaks, which I will go through now. So first, as last time, the Secretary of Administration has to prepare that expenditure reduction and transfer plan for consideration and approval. So just reflecting that language that we just added in the previous subsection. And Joint Fiscal Committee engages in that process of considering and either approving or disapproving as before. And to maintain a balanced state budget, minimize impact to Vermonters, and abide by legislative intent, Joint Fiscal Committee can make a recommendation to the E-Board to do the things that we discussed last week. So no change there. So utilize the rainy day fund to support impacted programs, revert any unexpended funds, abolish spending authority, and make such reductions or transfers in appropriations as necessary to support the priorities of the General Assembly. So that is all essentially the same. Subdivision 4, also in yellow, is another trigger. And this one provides that in the event that a reduction of the federal funds results in a 5% or more reduction in the total funds available to support an appropriation, in that event, then the Secretary of Administration is required to notify the Joint Fiscal Committee. So this is really just a notification requirement as opposed to a series of events that must take place involving the Joint Fiscal Committee.
Just to add some context, 1% of total federal funds, I believe we heard, was about $32 million. So if federal funds collectively across state government are reduced from what's we're planning on by 32 million or more, then the administration would need to present a proposal for possibly dealing with that. The proposal included transferring funds from the reserve that would have to go to the emergency board. Is that fair? But I mean, they could propose reducing some actual appropriations, and the Joint Fiscal Committee could approve that, or not, and say, you know, we don't like your plan, come back with a new plan. And the second part that Bryn's talking about is basically just a reporting requirement so that we can keep track of what we're losing for federal funds, if any.
Questions on that? Oh, okay, let's continue.
So in the next section, no change to that section of the duties of the E-Board. But if you scroll down to the following section, which I think is on page 4, here is the general fund, the transportation fund balance reserve statute. And the change here is just to increase that amount. It was originally, I think, 5% in the version that you saw, increase it to 10% so that the General Assembly can unreserve and appropriate or transfer an amount up to 10% of that rainy day fund to fund unforeseen needs in the event of an emergency. And the idea here was just to create some parity between the amount that the General Assembly can unreserve and appropriate and the amount that the E-Board in that next section is authorized to unreserve in the event of a reduction. So the last change, I think you see in that next section, subsection 2, and this is really just sort of clean up to add some words there to make it more accurately reflect what the E-Board and what the General Assembly can do when they unreserve rainy day funds.
That's sort of the how we do it.
Yes.
Not to say how we do it.
Yeah. And then no change to the next section.
Do you have anything you want to add to this?
No,
Okay.
I the Chair of Ways and Means conference with us as well, and I think it's fair to say the administration didn't think this language is necessary because of the powers of the E-Board already. They did make some suggested tweaks to it, which we mostly adopted and made a few additional of our own. So
good.
Hopefully there's one spread agreement.
Thank you for taking that up and getting that organized, Jim. I appreciate it. And Bryn, thank you for coming down. Does anybody have any other questions of Bryn? I know you had to. Dave, go ahead.
Well, just, am I tracking correctly? If a 1% reduction on the federal level is equal to 32 million, and this group has the authority to transfer 10 million on a $98 million rainy day fund, that's 10%.
Yeah.
That's roughly how much? 10 million. So there's quite a gap between what they can move and what potential liability could be,
Right.
but we all know that. No need,
That's currently, there's limited ability to transfer funds to, right now, it's 1% of total revenue, which would be like 90 million, give or take. And they don't have the ability to cover 90 million right now, right? The E-board doesn't have the ability to increase taxes to offset that. If it were such an emergency that, the governor could call the General Assembly back in session.
thank you. Just wanted to wrap my head around it.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Brent, for dropping everything and coming to see us. Appreciate it. So this language is now in our budget. And while Bryn was talking, Brady has come with all the language, so we'll stay live for a moment. And you just got the web report. And so I think what I'd like to do is check back in with everybody. It's 20 of 4, check back in with everybody, come here at 4:30. If that's, we'll see. If you need more time, we will give you more time, but that's our check-in time, just to see if there's anything that, whether you need more time or not, and if we don't need more time, then we'll get ready to that. But we will do what we, how many pages do we have?
It's second more, 73.
Yeah, you know, 73? Yeah, it'll get bigger before the end. We'll take a pool and bet on what we think the final one is. Thank you. Oh, it is literally hot off the press. So, Aaron, and all JFO will be here to help you out with any questions. So